Between the days of October 31st and November 5th, 1975, a series of brutal murders took place in North Canton, Ohio. 4 men and 3 women between the ages of 16 and 29 were targeted, with one survivor leaving an eyewitness account of 2 attackers, gender unidentified, each wearing a wolf mask. The incident is known as the Wolf Twin Murders. So today's guest is burrito cashier Tripp Wexler. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, former burrito cashier. Well, I mean, I was a cashier at the Burrito Bandit from the years 1995 to 1999. I'm currently more or less unemployed, but I prefer the term independent investigator.
Okay, that's great. And how long have you been doing investigations?
Well, it really has been... I mean, I've always kind of been interested in this stuff, and I've been interested in murder and true crime ever since the events of 1997, but it's really in the last 5 years that I've gotten deep into it, ever since I really discovered the Wolf Twin Murders and its my connection.
So let's start off with that. Tell us your connection. What is your story?
Well, I don't have a connection per se exactly, but there is some suspicion of a connection, which I guess I can expand on. So I have a deeper connection with a case called the Vladimir Werewolf or the Wolfenstein Murders, which took place in Vladimir, Florida in 1997. So I don't know if you guys have heard about this.
I've heard about them, but only from you.
I haven't seen this one.
Yeah. I've only heard of it from you from our Web Sleuth conversations.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of geeked out on it a little bit, and I think people are just now starting to form this connection, or the possible connection, because there are some striking similarities. Some people might say it's, it might go a little far to say that they're absolutely connected, but the similarities are spooky to say the least, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so, what were these murders? What were they?
So, well, I'll give you my story and my connection to it. So, I was a as you said, cashier at a restaurant called the Burrito Bandit in Vladimir, Florida. Okay. So, basically, what happened was I was working one day, and this woman came out, or the young woman by the name of Lauren Silver, which I found out the next day when I saw her picture on the news. So she came in, she ordered, a couple tacos and, if I remember correctly, like a couple tacos and a drink. We kind of chat a little bit, because it's a pretty mundane job. I sit there and kind of take order after order, and it's usually, people from the area who I've seen a million times getting 6 burritos or whatever. And she came in and ordered a couple tacos, and I hope I don't sound creepy when I say this, but, I noticed that she was very pretty. She was very cute. Mm-hmm. Small, petite blonde. She was 19. I was, a little younger, about 17. So, I kind of perked up with interest. So this is why I kind of remember her. So we kind of talked a little bit, flirted a little bit, and then she went on her way. And I didn't really think much of it, aside from, being like, wow, she was pretty cute. I hope she comes in again. Until the next day I was watching the news at home, and then her picture pops up with, murder all over it. I was pretty shocked. It was pretty messed up. So I was like, wow, I can't believe this happened. And, later came out that she was stabbed in the stomach with a big knife. And
sounds pretty similar to me.
Yeah, it's kind of spooky actually how similar it seems. So she was gutted with a knife. Apparently it was a huge mess. And we later found out that she was caught on the tapes, outside after she left, after I talked to her, and then about 30 seconds after she left, there was a figure in what looked to be a wolf mask that followed her. So that was the last time she was seen. I was the last person to see her, and the camera that caught, this figure, I'm not sure if it was a man or a woman, but basically...
Was it only one, or was it two?
It was just one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why...
Could have been a copycat.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I mean, as we've discussed this, and as I've thought about it, there's the possibility: is it a copycat? Is it completely unrelated? Is it just was it inspired by werewolf movies or whatever? Who knows? But there has been some speculation.
Well, the thing that I just immediately see a connection to is the wolf mask.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a specific thing to copy. I bet there's got to be a fucking connection.
It's true, but as a copy, it's like before the internet was like really a thing.
Yeah.
And this, these murders were in the 70s. Somebody in Florida hearing about that and copycatting it in the 90s that feels weird.
Well, what's weird about it is that I didn't really know about the Wolf Twin murders until 5 years ago when I was researching it on the internet. Had one of those late nights on Wikipedia, and it popped up. As you guys know, the Wolf Twin murders aren't as well known as, John Wayne Gacy or Ted Bundy.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, of course.
So I think...
that's media manipulation because they needed their rock stars at the time.
Absolutely.
And they're doing everything they can to cover up that the government's clearly involved with the Wolf Twin murders.
Yeah.
Creepy clowns sell better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. When you can find a boogeyman to pin it on, when you have your Ted Bundy, when you have your John Wayne Gacy, it's easy to do that. When we don't know, and there is, like you say, suspicion thrown on the government, they don't want to talk about that. Yeah, and it wasn't until years later when I was on Wikipedia one night, just you ever do that thing where you're just kind of clicking from story to story?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, and I see Wolf Twin murders, and I was like, oh well. That must be Vladimir because, there were actually two murders. So there was, the murder of Lauren Silver, and then there was a murder a couple weeks later where there wasn't a witness, but they were similarly gutted with a knife.
Wow.
So I thought twin murders, that must be what it is.
Right.
And I read more about it. I was like, oh no, this was in Ohio.
So who was the second murder victim?
The second murder victim was a man named Bradley Edwards. He was about 34 at the time, and he was found in a playground. About 3 miles away, still in Vladimir, but essentially it was a pretty messed up situation. It happened in the middle of the night, and parents came in the morning bright and early to find a body strewn across the monkey bars.
That sounds exactly like the murder of David Harold, who he was killed on October 31st. Yeah. He was off of State Street. He was just laid across on display, and it's this that was the first of the Wolf Twin murders. I'm not convinced that was the first. I think there were many others before that, but they started to try to get more theatrical to create more fear,
more tension. There's got to be a reason. You don't just leave a body like that.
Well, what's interesting is that this one could construct the narrative that this, if it wasn't a copycat, and if this was the same murder as the Wolf Twin murders, that he had taken a sabbatical of sorts and not murdered for a while, and perhaps Lauren Silver was his first re-entry into that world, because it was less theatrical, it was less extravagant. It was in an alley just behind the Burrito Bandit, and it was much less theatrical, as I said. It was in an alley. This was also it wasn't in the middle of the night, so perhaps he was under more pressure, but it was just stabbed in the gut, guts pulled out, left on the scene. And perhaps that was his warm-up. And then the next one is, he's getting back in the game, and then when he gets to Bradley Edwards in the playground, he's back to his old tricks again.
Right.
I have a question for you. I guess the investigators, did they confirm it was a knife wound that gutted them? Because they, at least with the Wolf Twin murders, they never found a weapon, never found any real evidence.
As far as I know, when they questioned me, I remember them using the term gutted.
I mean, wolf doesn't need a knife to get into a stomach, though.
Yeah. I mean, I never saw the photos. They just said she was gutted, and I don't remember them saying she was gutted with a knife. I mean, that's just naturally what I thought of, but I think that's a really good point. We don't know. I mean, and we assume when somebody's gutted that, there's some kind of instrument being used. What I do know and what I do remember is that a common criticism, and it almost became a joke of sorts, was the lack of investigation that went into it following it. So there's one murder happened, they talked to me, because I was the last person who had seen her. And, I told her what I knew, and it was clear that I had been working that night, that, I was on camera, sitting there being my, the Burrito Bandit cashier. And, and then when the second murder happened, I think they kind of went into crisis mode. Less in terms of keeping us safe and more in terms of, keeping public speculation down, right? Calming people down, everything like that. And of course, we were all just like, oh my God, it's the Vladimir werewolves, the Wolfenstein murders, it's all this stuff like that. But it didn't really become a big thing in law enforcement. It didn't really become too much of a big thing, actually, in the news media, which you'd think it would. Nowadays, pretty blonde girl gets killed and Nancy Grace is all over it. This was, this is a little bit before then, so it was a buzz for a month or two in Florida, in Vladimir, Florida, but died down pretty quick after that, and they never found anybody who did it.
I'm sorry, I can't recall. Are you still in Vladimir right now, or have you moved since then?
Well, yeah, I'm still a resident in Vladimir, Florida.
Is there any kind of, like an urban legend or something, at least with kids, would pop up from that? Are you aware if there's anything like that kind of going on in town?
There was this idea of, where it became almost like a boogeyman, this thing about the Vladimir werewolf, I had a friend who one of those friends who was always drawing kind of weird pictures, and I remember he drew this really cool thing of somebody wearing the mask that, kind of like the mask you could make out in this video, and then lifting up the mask and then revealing a wolf face underneath, which was kind of cool, and we joked about putting it on a t-shirt or something like that.
My friend Adam did the exact same thing
really?
with the Wolf Twin murders. Yeah, he actually, we got sent to the principal's office because we had been drawing these different wolf murder faces, or, like the wolves killing the victims. And of course, they thought we were all fucked up, and we were like, no, these are real things that happen, and why don't you know about this? And I mean, we were 13 at the fucking time.
How did you hear about it?
I heard about these from my father. He was friends with Paul Rader and Cecilia Theodore. It's really interesting. My dad actually, and you know what? This is just blowing my mind. My dad is from Florida.
Really?
And and he moved. Heavy. Well, he moved to Ohio to go to Bowling State University, and I think he actually had a thing with Cecilia Theodore. Wow. I don't think her. I think actually her older sister or something. He never gets into the specifics about that, but anyways, he knew who Paul Rader and Cecilia Theodore were, and both of them, as we know, they were found on November 2nd, 1975 in the parking lot of Maxie's Drive-In, and, discovered by a local paper boy. Yeah. And, I don't know, so he would just always talk about it, and he was really suspicious about the lack of coverage that all of these murders got, because it really seemed to be that the only people who cared were the immediate family.
Yeah.
And my dad was, very anti-Governor Jim Rhodes at the time.
Who wasn't?
Yeah, because he's a piece of shit. But he was convinced that there was some kind of cult activity with Governor Rhodes, and just some kind of cover-up, just to I don't know if it was a bloodlust thing or if they're worshiping Satan. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can't blame the Satan worshippers, man. That's so outplayed. They got statues in government buildings now.
Yeah, but that's modern Satanism. Yeah, that's I'm talking
classic Judas
government.
Priest style.
Yeah, I'm talking government conspiracy, people that actually worship the devil, not in an ironic way to gain more power.
Okay.
That's what I think. Whether or not it's true or not.
The Morning Star.
Right.
Well, one of the was there a military connection at all? Do you guys know about any military connection with the Ohio murders? Because one of the things that we used to talk about, and again, this is the cover-up or conspiracy that's I think could have happened in Florida seemed to be a bit less developed than what you guys have here. But one thing that we did talk about was that Lawrence Silver's father was a colonel in the army.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So and as is typical as what you might think of military families, they were very, very stoic, and he was this very stoic man, and there wasn't that kind of expected thing where they're just crying and pleading for the killer on TV. They were just very stoic and quiet. And we remember looking at Colonel Silver and just thinking like, man, he's taking it very stoically, if that. And then there wasn't really.
Almost like, does he know something?
Well,
like,
I don't know. I don't want to be too much of a conspiracy nut. And of course, a lot of this is based on us just being dumb kids and talking shit, amongst each other while getting high. And we're like, we used to kind of be like, what does Colonel Silver really know? Did he have some connection with this?
Right. Well, back to the Jim Rhodes connection. Jim Rhodes was completely responsible for the infamous Kent State shootings on May 4th, 1970.
It's true.
And, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was some direct military connection, even if, where was Colonel, what's his name again?
Colonel Silver?
Yeah.
This is the father of Lawrence Silver.
Where do you know where he was stationed or how long he was in the military? Is he still alive, do you know?
I don't know, actually. This is, maybe he could be a future guest on the program. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so, yeah. I mean, he was probably in his, 40s, 50s at this time. This was 1997.
Still here, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of military bases in that part of Florida. And so I assumed he was on one of those military bases. I mean, Florida's a big military state.
Right.
They've got Navy, Army, a lot of stuff going on there. It could have been Cape Canaveral. I don't know.
Wow. Yeah.
So I mean, is there any military connection going on with the Ohio murders, the Wolf Twin murders?
I've never found anything direct other than the Kent State shootings with the National Guard, but I'm sure there's got to be some kind of connection to the higher-ranking officers that used to work directly with Governor Rhodes. I haven't found any in particular, but that's a really interesting thing to go into.
It might be worth looking into the victims of Kent State.
Right.
I wonder if there are any.
Do we know anything about? I haven't looked this up, embarrassingly, but do we know anything about the actual National Guardsman that physically did the shooting? Do we know who that is? Can we look that up?
To this day, we've never pinned it on an individual soldier who did it.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a generic, like, just some young kid.
I mean, that's convenient. Yeah. They keep track of your ammo.
This was the National Guard, correct?
Yes.
At Kent State?
Correct. Yeah.
This is a stretch. And I didn't really know about the Wolf Twins when I was a kid. Like, I grew up in Bolivar, Ohio, really close to Canton. Just never really heard about it until I was older and kind of started looking into stuff like this. And a lot of the candidates who took part in MK Ultra and all the CIA government programs we know are legit now were from the Midwest. And Ohio's kind of a Midwest state. They were all about using college kids and like messing with the youth. And that could tie into, controlling the protests that were going on at Kent State. There could be some kind of thing.
So how many of the victims of the Wolf Twin murders were college age?
All of them. They ranged between
like 20s,
16 to 29.
Huh.
They were all young, and you know what? I've never actually questioned the murderers themselves, their age. I never really have wondered if they were college age or if they were middle aged. I mean, we don't even know if they're men or women.
There has to be some kind of manipulation there. If there's no reason, I can't believe it's just crazy people. That's always the excuse they give. They're just crazy.
Just, people who went nuts. Well, I mean, it's telling also that Lauren Silver was a college student as well. She was at Vladimir Community College, VCC. She was a freshman, I believe. And I don't know about David Harold. I mean, he, as we talked about, he's a little bit older. So I don't know his connection. He's a bit more of a mystery.
Sure.
So I don't really know.
Well, he was kind of a recluse anyways.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unsolved questions on who he was and what his home life was like.
Yeah. Well, this was the strange thing about that, so even though Colonel Silver didn't seem to be playing the normal role of the grieving parent, he was seen a lot on TV. So when they were covering it, you saw the couple, you saw the grieving parents, even though they didn't grieve as most parents would, you'd expect. David Harold, I mean, it was almost like he was a vagrant. I mean, they didn't say as such, but, there were no family members that were talked about on TV. None that were shown. He was almost like a footnote. I don't know, I think at the time we assumed this was just the police trying to keep it under control. They didn't want a media circus because you know how it is. This was the 90s where like that media circus was just kind of becoming a major thing. So there's not too much known about him. I mean, that would be an interesting investigation to look into. But it was, knowing more about these other victims and how they're all college kids. I'm wondering about his place in it. Perhaps he was an associate of Colonel Silver. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
There's a really great conspiracy theory writer, Andrew Norwood. He's convinced that chemtrails have actually been used to infect people's minds to do these murders and not be aware that they're doing them.
That's pretty specific for a chemtrail.
Well, but I mean, what a better way to keep people under control and keep people scared than have, you don't know who the wolf twin could be.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It could be the fluoride in your toothpaste making you be the wolf twins too, if that's the case.
That's true.
I mean, it could be.
I mean, yeah.
When Tripp and I first started talking, I had only known about Ohio murders, and to realize that these have happened in other states. We don't know, we don't know about Nevada. What if there were murders in California? And the thing is, because nothing is connected, everything is...
What goes farther back?
Everything is so locally oriented that you never really have a national network that's able to connect all of these things together.
Well, that's what you guys are. You're attempting to connect this, and I don't doubt that perhaps chemtrails play a major role in this.
Sure.
I mean, many people say that chemtrails can cause all sorts of ills, both social and physical.
So, I think what we've come to the conclusion is clearly chemtrails are connecting these Florida murders and these Ohio murders together.
I mean, I think that's a good starting off point.
Yeah.
My name is Julian Stowe.
I'm Alex Pisani.
And this is
The Wolf Twin Murders.
The Wolf Twin Murders by Dorian Wallace is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International License, based on a concept at www.wolftwinmurders.com.